My name is Elaine Morgan, 32 years old, and I am sitting in this law office, my hands trembling as I prepare to face my family after 5 years of exile. I can feel their eyes on me, judging, dismissing. She is not even family, my mother whispers loudly enough for me to hear, making sure her words cut deep. The others snicker, looking at me with contempt in their eyes. The lawyer, Mr. Foster, catches my gaze and nods slightly. It is time. Before I continue with the moment that made my entire family collapse, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss stories about karma serving justice on a silver platter. I was born into what outsiders would call a privileged life. My father, Gregory Morgan, was a successful businessman who specialized in real estate development. Our home in Connecticut was sprawling with 6 bedrooms, a swimming pool, and a garden that made our neighbors green with envy. My mother, Catherine Morgan, played the role of the perfect wife and socialite. She hosted charity galas, attended country club events, and made sure our family maintained the right connections. From the outside, we looked like the quintessential American success story. But within those perfectly painted walls, happiness was scarce. My parents argued constantly when they thought I could not hear. My father worked late most nights, and when he was home, tension filled every room he entered. My mother focused on maintaining appearances, treating our home like a showpiece rather than a place to live and love. I learned early that I was never quite good enough in my mother's eyes. My grades were excellent, but she wondered why they were not perfect. I played the piano beautifully, but she questioned why I had not mastered the violin as well. At social gatherings, she would introduce me with a tight smile, and then quickly move the conversation to other topics, as if I were an obligation rather than a source of pride. "Why can you not be more like the Henderson girl?" she would ask. "She already speaks 3 languages, and she is only 10. Or, "Look at how poised the Wilson daughter is. You should really work on your posture, Elaine." There was only one person who made me feel truly loved and valued. My grandfather, Harold Pierce, my mother's father. Grandpa Harold had built a technology company from nothing in the early 80s and had turned it into one of the most successful firms in the country. But his wealth never changed his humble nature or his ability to see worth beyond material possessions. Weekends at Grandpa Harold's farm were my escape. His property sat on 100 acres of beautiful land about an hour from our home. There I could run freely, climb trees, and get my hands dirty without hearing my mother's disapproving sighs. Grandpa would take me fishing in the small lake on his property, teaching me patience and the value of quiet contemplation. "The true measure of success is not what you have, Elaine," he would tell me, as we sat waiting for fish to bite. "It is who you are when no one important is watching." In his home office, he would show me maps and financial reports, explaining how his business worked in simple terms I could understand. "Pay attention to details, but never lose sight of the big picture," he advised. "That is how you build something that lasts." On cold winter evenings, we would sit by his fireplace, and he would tell me stories about his own childhood during tougher times, about the risks he took to start his company, and about the importance of treating every person with dignity, regardless of their status. "Money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy character," was one of his favorite sayings. And without character, comfort means nothing. When I was 7 years old, my brother Patrick was born. From the moment he arrived, it was clear that he was the golden child, the true heir in my parents' eyes. My father would parade him around, boasting about his son and heir, while my mother doted on him with an affection she had never shown me. "Now we have someone to carry on the Morgan name properly," my father would say within my earshot, as if I were invisible or irrelevant. Patrick received the newest toys, the best tutors, and constant praise, even for the smallest achievements. When he took his first steps, my parents threw a party. When he spoke his first complete sentence, they recorded it and shared it with everyone they knew. My accomplishments, meanwhile, were expected rather than celebrated. At school events, my parents would arrive late for my performances but would rearrange their entire schedules to attend Patrick's preschool activities. At my 10th grade piano recital, where I played a complicated Chopin piece that had taken me months to master, they left early because Patrick had a slight fever. The fever broke an hour later, but they never apologized for missing my standing ovation. During family dinners, the conversation revolved around Patrick's development, his potential, and his future. I became the invisible child, present but unseen, speaking but unheard. I learned to find validation elsewhere in my grades, in the praise from my teachers, and most importantly, in the unwavering support from Grandpa Harold. On my 16th birthday, my parents forgot to plan a celebration until Grandpa Harold called to ask about the arrangements. They hastily organized a small dinner, inviting only family members who happened to be available on short notice. My mother presented me with a generic gift card clearly purchased that same day. Patrick, who was 9 at the time, received more attention than I did, throwing a tantrum when the focus was not on him. That night, after everyone had left, Grandpa Harold stayed behind and handed me a small box. "This belonged to your grandmother," he said, revealing a beautiful vintage watch. She was a woman who knew her worth and never let anyone diminish it. She would have wanted you to have it. That watch became my most treasured possession, a reminder that I was valued by someone who truly mattered. Throughout my childhood, I kept hoping that something would change, that my parents would eventually see me, really see me. But as the years passed, the divide only grew wider, and I learned to build my own sense of self-worth brick by brick, separate from their validation. Little did I know that this independence forced upon me by their neglect would eventually become my greatest strength. As I entered adulthood, the dream of finally gaining my parents' recognition still lingered in my heart despite years of disappointment. I chose to study business administration in college, inspired by Grandpa Harold's mentorship and my own genuine interest in the field. My father scoffed at my choice. "Business is not for women," he declared over dinner when I announced my major. "You should study something more suitable like education or nursing. Better yet, focus on finding a husband from a good family." My mother nodded in agreement. "The Morgan connections could find you an excellent match. Someone from the Whitmore family, perhaps. Their oldest son is single and set to inherit millions." I stood my ground. I want to build something of my own, not marry someone else's achievement. This declaration was met with scornful laughter. Patrick, then 12, mimicked their reaction, though he clearly had no understanding of the conversation. Throughout college, I excelled in my studies, making the dean's list every semester. I joined business competitions and won several awards for my innovative ideas. Each achievement was another brick in the foundation of my self-worth, built without my parents' mortar of approval. When graduation day came, I scanned the audience repeatedly, hoping against hope to see my parents' faces. They had promised to attend, but as the ceremony progressed, their seats remained empty. Later, I learned they had chosen to attend Patrick's middle school debate competition, instead deeming it more important than the culmination of my 4 years of hard work. Grandpa Harold was there, though, beaming with pride as I walked across the stage. He took me to dinner afterward, and over dessert, he made me an offer. "I would love to have you come work at Pierce Technologies," he said. "Start from the bottom, learn the business inside out. What do you say?" As tempting as it was, I declined. "I need to do this my way, Grandpa. I love you for offering, but I need to know I can succeed on my own merits." He smiled, understanding in his eyes. "I expected nothing less from you, Elaine. Just know the door is always open." After graduation, I secured a position at a small marketing firm in Boston. The salary was modest, the office cramped, but it was mine, earned through my own efforts. I rented a tiny apartment with a college friend, Laura Fisher, and began building my career step by step. Every Sunday, I would call Grandpa Harold, sharing my experiences and seeking his advice. He never imposed his opinions, but offered wisdom when asked. Our bond grew stronger, a lighthouse in the stormy relationship with the rest of my family. It was during this time that I met Jack Reynolds. He worked in architectural design, creating sustainable building plans for urban developments. We met at a coffee shop where I was working on a weekend project. He accidentally spilled coffee on my papers, and his genuine remorse and offer to replace not just the coffee, but also the ruined notebook charmed me immediately. Jack came from a middle-class family in Michigan. His father was a high school teacher, his mother a nurse. He had put himself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. His work ethic, integrity, and kind heart drew me to him like a magnet. After 6 months of dating, I brought Jack home to meet my family. My mother took one look at his modest watch and non-designer clothes and pulled me aside. "Really, Elaine? This is your choice. He probably makes less in a year than your father makes in a week." My father was equally dismissive, barely engaging Jack in conversation and making thinly veiled references to people who know their place in society. Patrick, now 14 and thoroughly indoctrinated in my parents' values, openly snickered at Jack's mention of his father's teaching career. On the drive back to Boston, Jack was quiet. Finally, he spoke. "Your family really does not like me, do they?" "They do not know you," I replied. "And honestly, their opinion does not matter to me. I know who you are." He reached for my hand, and in that moment, I felt more connected to him than I ever had to my blood relatives, save for Grandpa Harold. Jack and I grew closer over the next year. I introduced him to Grandpa Harold, who embraced him immediately, seeing past surface appearances to the quality of his character. The four of us, including Laura, often spent weekends at the farm helping with maintenance or simply enjoying each other's company around a bonfire. When Jack proposed to me on a snowy evening in Boston Common, I did not hesitate to say yes. He had saved for months to buy a modest ring, which meant more to me than any expensive jewelry could have. Foolishly, I thought my engagement might finally bridge the gap with my parents. I arranged a dinner at their home, excited despite myself to share my happiness. The evening was a disaster from the start. My mother criticized everything from my hairstyle to my choice of dress. My father buried himself in his phone, barely acknowledging our presence. When I finally gathered the courage to announce our engagement, showing the ring with nervous pride, the reaction was worse than I could have imagined. "You cannot be serious," my mother hissed. "This is the man you plan to throw your life away on, a nobody with no prospects and no connections." "He is an excellent architect with a promising career," I defended. "He designs buildings for community centers," my father interjected with disgust. "The Morgans do not marry down Elaine. We have a reputation to maintain." "If you go through with this," my mother added, her voice cold, "do not expect us to attend. In fact, do not expect anything from us ever again." I stood up, my hands shaking with both anger and hurt. "Then, I guess this is goodbye." "Do not be dramatic," my father scoffed. "You will come to your senses." "No," I said firmly. "I have spent my entire life trying to earn your love and approval. I am done. Jack loves me for who I am, not for what I can do for the family image." "Then you are no longer welcome in this house," my father declared, standing as well. "Patrick is our only child from this moment forward." My mother did not contradict him. Patrick, who had been listening from the staircase, smirked with satisfaction. I left that night with tears streaming down my face, but with a strange sense of liberation. The worst had happened, and I had survived. The chain of seeking validation from people who would never give it was finally broken. Little did I know that this painful severance was just the beginning of a journey that would eventually lead to a reckoning none of us could have anticipated. The first few months after being disowned were the hardest. Despite knowing intellectually that I was better off without my parents' toxic influence, there were nights when I cried myself to sleep, mourning the family I had always wanted, but never truly had. Jack was my rock during this time, holding me through the worst moments and reminding me of my worth when doubts crept in. We moved in together, combining our modest resources to rent a small but cozy apartment in Cambridge. Our wedding plans were simple: a small ceremony in a local park with close friends and Grandpa Harold. No elaborate gown or extravagant reception, just honest vows and genuine celebration. Grandpa Harold was heartbroken about the rift, but unsurprised. "Your mother has always valued the wrong things," he told me during one of our private lunches. "She married your father for his status, not his character. It is a path that has never led to true happiness." He continued to meet with me regularly, though we were careful to keep our relationship secret from my parents. He would come to Boston, or we would meet in small towns halfway between our homes. During these meetings, he shared more and more about the workings of his company, discussing strategies, challenges, and his vision for the future. "Always build with integrity," he advised. "A business is only as strong as the principles of the person running it." With Jack's encouragement and Grandpa Harold's guidance, I began to develop the idea for my own consulting firm. I had noticed that many small businesses struggled with marketing and growth strategies, unable to afford the high fees of established consulting agencies. My concept was to offer scaled services at reasonable rates, helping these businesses compete in an increasingly digital marketplace. Starting with just myself and a laptop at our dining table, I began taking on small clients: a local bakery that needed help with social media, a family-owned hardware store struggling to compete with big box retailers, a new yoga studio trying to establish its presence. The pay was minimal at first, but the satisfaction of helping these businesses grow was immeasurable. Jack supported my venture completely, even using his architectural skills to design a logo and business cards for me. We were not rich by any measure, but we were happy building a life based on mutual respect and shared values. During these 5 years, I made several attempts to reconcile with my family. I sent birthday and Christmas cards that went unacknowledged. I reached out when I heard through mutual acquaintances that my father had undergone minor surgery. Each attempt was met with silence, or worse, returned mail-marked address unknown in my mother's handwriting. Patrick, meanwhile, had been groomed to take over the family business. At 19, he was given a position in my father's company that most people work decades to achieve. Local business publications featured him as a rising star, praising his natural business acumen, while conveniently ignoring the silver spoon that had placed him in his position. Through these same business circles, I occasionally heard news about my family. My father had expanded his real estate holdings, my mother had been appointed to the board of an exclusive private school, and Patrick was being lauded as the future of Morgan Enterprises, despite having no real experience or demonstrated skills beyond his last name. In our 3rd year of separation, my consulting business had grown enough that I needed to hire 2 employees. We moved into a small office space, and my client list expanded to include several mid-size companies. Jack's career was also flourishing. His sustainable designs were gaining recognition, and he had been promoted to senior architect at his firm. We bought our first home, a modest 3-bedroom house with a small yard, perfect for the family we hoped to start. The mortgage stretched our budget, but we managed it together, proud of what we had built from scratch. It was around this time that Grandpa Harold's health began to decline. At 86, he had remained remarkably vibrant and sharp-minded, still going into the office 3 days a week and keeping a hand in major company decisions. But a series of small strokes forced him to slow down and eventually led to his hospitalization. I visited him daily, often bringing work to do by his bedside so we could still discuss business ideas. During these hospital stays, he began to share more personal reflections, regrets about his relationship with my mother, observations about my parents' marriage, and concerns about Patrick's character development. "Your brother is not entirely to blame," he said one afternoon, his voice weaker, but his eyes still bright with intelligence. "He was shaped by your parents' values just as you were. The difference is that you recognized the flaws in those values and chose differently." During one particularly lucid day, he asked me to bring him a leather portfolio from his home office. Bottom drawer of the desk behind the blue folders, he instructed. When I retrieved it, he asked for privacy and spent an hour reviewing its contents before sealing it again with shaking hands. I have lived a long life, Elaine, he said, handing it back to me for safekeeping. I have made my share of mistakes, but I have also learned from them. Sometimes justice takes time, but it always arrives eventually. I did not understand the significance of his words then, but I would remember them vividly in the months to come. In our 5th year apart from my family, Jack and I began trying to conceive a child. We wanted to start our family in our new home, creating the warm, loving environment both of us valued. After several months without success, medical tests revealed that I had a condition that would make conception difficult but not impossible. The news was disappointing but not devastating. We agreed to continue trying naturally for a while before considering other options. Grandpa Harold was the only person I shared this news with apart from Jack. His response was unexpected. "Family is not always blood, Elaine," he said, patting my hand. "It is love and choice and commitment. Whatever path your family takes, it will be the right one, because you and Jack will build it on the right foundation." 2 weeks later, Grandpa Harold suffered a major stroke. He was rushed to the hospital, but never regained consciousness. The doctors said it was only a matter of time. I sat by his bed day and night, holding his hand, talking to him about everything, and nothing, hoping some part of him could still hear me. Jack brought me food and fresh clothes, supporting me as I maintained my vigil. On the 3rd night, in the quiet hours before dawn, Grandpa Harold took his last breath. I was alone with him, having sent Jack home to rest. In that sacred moment between life and death, I felt a profound sense of peace mixed with my grief. He had lived well, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy of integrity that no amount of money could quantify. What I did not know then was that his legacy would soon change my life in ways I could never have imagined. The news of Grandpa Harold's death spread quickly through the business community and our extended family. I was not officially notified, of course. My parents made sure of that. Instead, I learned about the funeral arrangements from Dana Winters, an old family friend who had always been kind to me despite my parents' influence. "I thought you should know," Dana said over the phone, her voice gentle. "The service is on Friday, at St. Michael's Church, 2 o'clock in the afternoon." I thanked her, my throat tight with emotion. The fact that I had to hear about my own grandfather's funeral through a third party was yet another reminder of how completely I had been erased from the family narrative. Jack offered to take the day off work to accompany me, but I declined. "This is something I need to do alone," I told him, though the thought of facing my family without his support made my stomach churn with anxiety. The day of the funeral dawned bright and clear, a beautiful spring day that seemed at odds with the heaviness in my heart. I chose a simple black dress, nothing flashy that would draw attention. My goal was to pay my respects to the man who had loved me unconditionally, not to create a scene or provoke my family. I arrived at the church early and slipped into a seat at the back. As other mourners filled the pews, I kept my head down, aware of the curious glances and whispered comments. Many recognized me, but were unsure how to react given my estrangement from the family. My parents and Patrick arrived last, making a grand entrance that turned every head. My mother, draped in designer black, clutched a pristine white handkerchief that showed no signs of tears. My father walked beside her, his face set in what he probably thought was an expression of dignified grief. Patrick followed, attempting to mimic my father's somber demeanor, but failing to hide the bored impatience in his eyes. The service was elaborate and impersonal. The eulogies focused on Grandpa Harold's business accomplishments and philanthropic contributions, with barely a mention of his personal qualities or the relationships he valued. My father spoke at length about the Pierce legacy and how it would be honored and preserved, words that would later strike me as both ironic and prophetic. Not once did any of them acknowledge my presence, though I knew they had seen me. My mother's spine had stiffened visibly when she walked past my pew, and Patrick had given me a smirk that made my blood boil. After the service, I remained seated as others filed out to attend the graveside ceremony. I had decided to skip that part, knowing it would be even more difficult to blend into the background in the open cemetery. Instead, I planned to visit his grave privately in the coming days, to say my own goodbye without the performance of family unity that felt so false. As the church emptied, I finally stood preparing to leave. A tall, distinguished man in his late 50s approached me, his expression kind but professional. "Miss Morgan, I am Stephen Foster, your grandfather's attorney." I nodded, surprised. "Yes, I am Elaine Morgan. Mr. Pierce spoke of you often, and with great affection," he said, reaching into his breast pocket. "He asked me to give you this in the event of his passing." He handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Grandpa Harold's distinctive handwriting. My hands trembled as I accepted it. "Thank you," I managed to say. "There is more," Mr. Foster continued. "Mr. Pierce requested that you attend the reading of his will. It will take place at my office next Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning." He handed me a business card with the address. "It is very important that you be there." My surprise must have shown on my face. "I am not sure that would be appropriate. My family—" "Your grandfather was most insistent," Mr. Foster interrupted gently. "He made special arrangements to ensure your presence would be, shall we say, impactful." Before I could ask what he meant, he added, "You may bring your husband if you wish. Mr. Pierce spoke highly of him as well." With that cryptic statement, he nodded politely and left me standing alone in the empty church, the envelope heavy in my hand. I waited until I was home with Jack beside me to open it. Inside was a single sheet of Grandpa Harold's personal stationery, covered in his increasingly shaky handwriting. "My dearest Elaine, if you are reading this, I have left this world behind. Do not grieve too deeply for me, for I have lived a full life and am ready for whatever comes next. There are things I wish I had done differently, chief among them my failure to stand more firmly against the way you have been treated by your parents. I believed that maintaining peace in the family was important, but I now see that peace without justice is merely surrender to wrong. I have watched you build your life with integrity and determination. You have become the kind of person I always hoped my family would produce, someone who values character over status, hard work over entitlement, and genuine relationships over advantageous connections. I have also watched others in our family make different choices that have disappointed me deeply. I ask you to attend the reading of my will. I know this will not be easy given the current state of family relations, but trust me when I say that your presence is essential. Some things need to be witnessed firsthand to be fully understood. Bring Jack. You will need his support. All will be put right, Elaine. That is my final promise to you. With all my love, Grandpa Harold." I read the letter aloud to Jack, my voice breaking several times. When I finished, we sat in silence, both processing the implications. "What do you think he means?" I finally asked. Jack took my hand. "I do not know, but it sounds important. Are you going to go?" I stared at the letter, tracing my grandfather's familiar handwriting with my fingertip. "I do not know." The thought of being in a small room with my parents and Patrick, enduring their contempt again. "But your grandfather specifically asked you to be there," Jack pointed out. "He never asked anything of you without good reason." Over the next few days, I went back and forth, weighing my dread of another confrontation against my respect for Grandpa Harold's wishes. In the end, it was the last line of his letter that decided me. All will be put right. What did he mean? What had he done? On Monday evening, I called Mr. Foster to confirm our attendance. "My husband and I will be there," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Excellent," he replied. Your grandfather will be pleased. The odd present tense did not escape me, but I chose not to comment on it. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with possibilities and fears. Jack held me close, his steady breathing, eventually lulling me into a fitful slumber filled with dreams of Grandpa Harold trying to tell me something I could not quite hear. Morning came too quickly, and with it the realization that I would soon face my family again in circumstances none of us could predict. As Jack and I dressed in our most professional attire, I felt like I was preparing for battle rather than a legal proceeding. Whatever happens, Jack said, straightening his tie, we face it together. I nodded, drawing strength from his unwavering support. Together. As we drove to the attorney's office, I clutched Grandpa Harold's letter in my purse like a talisman. Whatever he had planned, whatever was about to unfold, I trusted that he had my best interests at heart. He always had. The offices of Foster Blackwell and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a sleek downtown building. The reception area was tastefully appointed with leather furniture and subdued artwork, the kind of place that whispered money and discretion rather than shouting it. Jack and I arrived 15 minutes early, both of us too nervous to sit and wait at home any longer. The receptionist, a polished woman in her 40s, greeted us with professional warmth. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, Mr. Foster is expecting you. Would you like some coffee while you wait for the others to arrive? The use of my married name, which my family refused to acknowledge, felt like a small victory. We accepted the coffee offer and settled into a corner of the waiting area, speaking in low voices, about nothing important, both of us too tense for meaningful conversation. At precisely 9:55, the elevator doors opened and my family stepped out. My mother entered first, her designer outfit and perfect makeup, a stark contrast to my simple business suit. My father followed, his expensive watch glinting under the reception lights. Patrick trailed behind them, looking bored and slightly hungover. The moment they saw us, the atmosphere shifted. My mother's face hardened and she leaned toward my father, whispering something that made him frown. I could not hear most of it, but the phrase, "not even family," reached my ears, deliberately loud enough for me to catch. Patrick did not bother with subtlety. He snorted and said, "What is she doing here? Hoping for some handouts now that Grandpa is gone." Jack's hand tightened around mine, but I squeezed back silently, asking him to let it go. This was exactly what I had expected. Being prepared did not make it hurt less, but it did help me maintain my composure. The receptionist, who had clearly witnessed such family dynamics before, smoothly intervened. "Mr. Foster will see you all now. Please follow me." She led us down a hallway to a large conference room with a polished mahogany table. A video camera on a tripod stood in one corner, its red light indicating it was already recording. This unexpected detail made my parents pause at the doorway. "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded, pointing at the camera. Mr. Foster, who had been reviewing documents at the head of the table, looked up calmly. The video recording was explicitly requested by Mr. Pierce as part of his will execution. I assure you it is perfectly legal and standard in many estate settlements these days. My father looked like he wanted to object further, but after a moment's hesitation, he entered the room, guiding my mother to seats as far from Jack and me as possible. Patrick slouched into a chair beside them, immediately pulling out his phone. "Please put that away, Mr. Morgan," Mr. Foster said firmly. "This is a formal legal proceeding." Patrick rolled his eyes, but complied, shoving his phone into his pocket with obvious reluctance. Mr. Foster cleared his throat and began. "Thank you all for coming. We are here to execute the last will and testament of Harold James Pierce. Before we begin, I should note that Mr. Pierce was of sound mind when this will was prepared and signed 6 months ago. The document has been properly witnessed and notarized, and it reflects Mr. Pierce's explicit wishes." He opened a leather portfolio and removed several documents. I will now read the will in its entirety. The first section, was standard legal language, establishing the document as Harold's last will and revoking any previous wills. Then came the specific bequests. To various charities and educational institutions, Grandpa Harold left substantial donations totaling several $1,000,000. My parents shifted impatiently during this section, clearly anxious to get to the parts that affected them directly. To my daughter, Catherine Pierce Morgan, I leave the sum of $1,000,000 and my collection of first edition books which she admired as a child. My mother's expression softened slightly at this, though the amount was surely less than she had expected. To my son-in-law, Gregory Morgan, I leave my vintage car collection and the sum of $500,000. My father frowned, clearly disappointed. 5 vintage cars and $500,000 was generous by most standards, but knowing my grandfather's wealth, it was a relatively modest bequest. To my grandson Patrick Morgan, I leave my vacation property in Aspen, Colorado, and a trust fund of $1,000,000 to be administered by Foster Blackwell and Associates until he reaches the age of 35. Patrick straightened in his chair, a smug smile spreading across his face at the mention of the Aspen property, which was worth several million alone. The age restriction on the trust fund did not seem to bother him. He probably assumed he could find ways around it. Throughout these announcements, my family avoided looking in my direction. Their body language screamed triumph, certain that I had been left nothing or next to nothing. I sat quietly wondering why Grandpa Harold had insisted on my presence if this was all there was to hear. Mr. Foster continued with several smaller bequests to longtime employees and friends. Then he paused, took a sip of water, and looked directly at me for the first time since beginning the reading. Now we come to the final and most significant portion of Mr. Pierce's estate, he said, his voice taking on a more formal tone. This section requires some additional context. He pressed a button on a remote control, and a large screen descended from the ceiling at the end of the room. The lights dimmed slightly, and Harold's face appeared on the screen, recorded sometime during the months before his death. He looked tired but fully alert, his eyes sharp with purpose. "Hello everyone," the recording began. "If you are watching this, then I am no longer with you. I have asked Stephen to play this after the initial bequests have been read." My grandfather shifted in his seat, leaning forward slightly. "Throughout my life, I have valued 3 things, above all else: integrity, hard work, and genuine human connection. My greatest hope was to pass these values to my family, to leave behind not just financial wealth, but a legacy of character." He sighed deeply. "In recent years, I have been conducting a series of tests, quietly observing how different members of my family demonstrate or fail to demonstrate these core values. What I have discovered has been both heartening and deeply disappointing." The atmosphere in the conference room had changed completely. My parents sat rigid in their chairs, exchanging worried glances. Patrick's smugness had faded, replaced by confusion and the first hints of concern. "Catherine, my daughter, Grandpa Harold continued from the screen, you have chosen status over substance, appearance over authenticity. Gregory, you have pursued wealth at the expense of ethical considerations too many times to count. And Patrick, you have been taught to value entitlement over earning, taking over creating." My grandfather's gaze seemed to shift, as if he were looking directly at me now. "But one member of this family has consistently demonstrated the values I hold dear, often at great personal cost. One person has shown integrity when it would have been easier to compromise, has worked tirelessly without expecting handouts, has built genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than advantage." He smiled, a warm, proud smile that brought tears to my eyes. "Elaine, my granddaughter, has become the person I always hoped to see in my family. Despite being rejected by those who should have cherished her most, she has built a life of meaning and purpose. She has chosen love over status, integrity over convenience, and hard work over entitlement." The recording paused and Mr. Foster spoke. "At this point, I am instructed to read the final section of the will." He turned back to the document. To my granddaughter, Elaine Morgan Reynolds, I leave 75% ownership of Pierce Technologies, including all voting rights and executive authority. Additionally, I leave her my primary residence and farm property, all remaining investment accounts, and liquid assets not otherwise specified in this will. A stunned silence fell over the room. I felt as if the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Jack's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tightly. "This is outrageous," my father finally exploded, jumping to his feet. "There must be some mistake." "There is no mistake," Mr. Foster said calmly. "The will is quite clear and legally binding." My mother had gone pale, her perfectly manicured hand pressed against her throat. But that is billions of dollars. The company alone is worth. Currently valued at approximately $12 billion. Yes, Mr. Foster confirmed, making Miss Reynolds one of the wealthiest women in the country, effective immediately. Patrick stood now too, his face flushed with anger. "This is not fair. I am the one who visited him every month. I am the one who showed interest in the business." The recording resumed as if in direct response to Patrick's outburst. "I imagine there are objections being raised now," Grandpa Harold said, a knowing look in his eyes. "So let me address them directly. Patrick, you visited me only when cameras were present or when you needed money. Your interest in the business extended only to the wealth it could provide you, not to its operations or the people who make it successful." The screen changed, showing security footage of Patrick in Grandpa Harold's home office, rifling through drawers and pocketing items when he thought no one was looking. Another clip showed him at a club, clearly intoxicated, boasting about how he was just playing the game until the old man kicks it and he could get his hands on the real money. My parents watched in horror as their golden child was exposed. Patrick himself had collapsed back into his chair, his face drained of color. As for you, Catherine and Gregory, the recording continued, switching to footage of my parents in their home discussing strategies to accelerate the transfer of assets and referring to Harold as increasingly mentally unstable when he was prosting anything but. "You have consistently demonstrated that you value money over family appearances, over substance, and status over character," Grandpa Harold's voice continued over the damning footage. "You rejected your own daughter because she chose love over financial advantage. You have proven time and again that you cannot be trusted with the legacy I have built." The screen returned to Grandpa Harold's face. "Elaine, I know this comes as a shock to you. You never asked for this inheritance, never manipulated or maneuvered to secure it. That is precisely why you are the right person to carry forward what I have built. You understand that wealth is a responsibility, not just a privilege." Tears were streaming down my face now. Jack's arm had moved around my shoulders, supporting me as I processed this incredible turn of events. "Stephen has been instructed to guide you through the transition," Grandpa Harold continued. "The executive team has been prepared for this change in leadership. They know you and respect your intelligence and integrity, as I have spoken of you often." He leaned forward, his expression softening. "You once told me you wanted to build something of your own, and I respect that deeply. Consider this not a negation of that goal, but an opportunity to build upon a foundation with your own vision. Take what I have created and make it better, as I know you can." With a final smile, he concluded, "I love you, Elaine. I am proud of the woman you have become. Trust yourself as I have trusted you." The screen went dark, and the lights came back up in the conference room, revealing my family's shocked faces. My mother looked as if she might faint. My father seemed frozen in disbelief, and Patrick was visibly seething with rage and disappointment. Mr. Foster broke the heavy silence. "Miss Reynolds, if you would please come forward to sign the necessary documents to begin the transfer of assets." He gestured to the chair at the head of the table, Grandpa Harold's symbolic seat. As I stood on shaky legs, Jack squeezed my hand one more time, his eyes conveying his pride and support. The walk to that chair was the longest of my life. Each step represented not just the enormous inheritance I was about to receive, but the vindication of every choice I had made, every hardship I had endured, and every principle I had refused to compromise. As I sat down, my family's faces went completely pale. The reality was finally sinking in. The power dynamic had shifted permanently, and they knew it. The cameras continued to roll, capturing this moment of reckoning for posterity. The atmosphere in the conference room crackled with tension as Mr. Foster slid several documents across the table toward me. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up the pen, the weight of what was happening finally beginning to sink in. This first document, Mr. Foster explained, transfers the majority ownership of Pierce Technologies to you, effective immediately. The second establishes you as chairperson and chief executive officer with full voting rights and decision-making authority. I glanced down at the papers, seeing Grandpa Harold's signature already there, dated just 2 months before his passing. He had been planning this for some time, carefully arranging every detail. The realization brought fresh tears to my eyes, which I quickly blinked away. Before you sign, Mr. Foster continued, there are a few additional matters Mr. Pierce asked me to address. He pressed the remote again, and Grandpa Harold reappeared on the screen. Elaine, there are a few things you should know that I did not want to include in the main recording, he began. For the past 3 years, I have been quietly assessing the operations of Pierce Technologies, identifying key personnel and preparing them for this transition. He smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes that I remembered so well from our private conversations. You will find that most of the executive team already knows about you. I have shared your business ideas, your ethical approach to problem solving, and your vision for sustainable growth. They are prepared to support you, though they will rightly expect you to prove yourself through action, not just inheritance. My grandfather leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. I have also left detailed notes about ongoing projects to potential areas of concern and my recommendations for the future. These are just suggestions, however. I trust your judgment, Elaine. You have earned that trust through your own merit. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. As for the rest of the family, I have not made this decision lightly or out of spite. I have given them many opportunities to demonstrate the values that matter. Time and again, they have shown me who they truly are. The screen split to show more footage, Patrick meeting with competitors of Pierce Technologies, sharing information he should never have had access to. My father discussing ways to push the old man out once Patrick had gained enough influence. My mother coldly dismissing long-time employees who had been loyal to Grandpa Harold for decades. I do not show you this to hurt you, Grandpa Harold's voice continued, but to confirm that this decision was made with clear eyes and full information. You deserve to know the truth. The screen returned to his face alone. Now one last thing, Jack. Jack straightened beside me, surprised to hear his name. I have watched you support Elaine through difficult times, love her for who she is rather than what she could bring you, and work with integrity in your own career. You are a man of character, and I am pleased that Elaine found you. I have set aside a separate fund to support your architectural work in sustainable design, should you wish to expand your vision. Stephen has those details. My grandfather's eyes crinkled with his gentle smile. Take care of each other. Build something meaningful together. That would make me happiest of all. With that, the recording ended, and the room fell silent again. I looked over at Jack, who appeared as stunned as I felt. Then I turned my attention back to the documents before me. As I signed my name on each page, I was acutely aware of my family watching. When I finished the last signature, Mr. Foster collected the papers with a satisfied nod. Congratulations, Miss Reynolds. You are now the majority owner and CEO of Pierce Technologies. My father finally broke his shocked silence. This is absurd. Harold was clearly not in his right mind. We will contest this will immediately. Mr. Foster seemed entirely unruffled by this threat. You are welcome to try, Mr. Morgan, but I should inform you that Mr. Pierce anticipated this reaction. He underwent extensive cognitive and psychological evaluations just prior to finalizing these arrangements, with multiple independent experts documenting his mental competence. Additionally, the video evidence you have just witnessed would make any claim of undue influence or mental incapacity extremely difficult to prove. "We will see about that," my father blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. He was a businessman after all, and could recognize when the odds were stacked against him. My mother, who had remained nearly catatonic with shock, suddenly found her voice. "Elaine," she said, her tone shifting to one I recognized from childhood, the one she used when trying to manipulate through guilt. "Surely you can see this is not what your grandfather truly intended. He was old, confused. We are your family." I met her gaze steadily. "You made it very clear 5 years ago that I was no longer family. Grandpa Harold was the only one who stood by me, who valued me for who I am, rather than what I could do for the family image." Patrick, who had been seething in silence, exploded. "This is such bullshit. I am the one who deserves this. I am the one who has been preparing to take over a company. By selling confidential information to competitors," I asked quietly, nodding toward the screen where the evidence had been displayed. "By treating Grandpa Harold's legacy as your personal ATM." Patrick's face flushed deep red, but he had no response. Mr. Foster intervened smoothly. "I believe we have concluded our business here. Miss Reynolds, if you would like to adjourn to my private office, we can discuss the immediate next steps for the transition." As I stood to follow him, my father made one last desperate attempt. "Elaine, be reasonable. We can work something out, come to some arrangement that benefits everyone." I paused, looking at the man who had so easily discarded me when I failed to conform to his expectations. "I will be reasonable," I said quietly. "More reasonable than you were when you told me I was no longer your daughter. I do not want revenge, Dad. I just want to honor Grandpa Harold's wishes and legacy." "And how do you propose to run a $12 billion company?" my mother scoffed. "You have been managing a tiny consulting firm with, what, 2 employees? You are completely out of your depth." I felt Jack's hand at the small of my back, a silent reminder of his support. "Maybe I am," I acknowledged. "But Grandpa Harold believed in me, and I owe it to him to try. Besides, he left me excellent advisors and a strong executive team." As we turned to leave, Patrick shouted after us, "This is not over. You will regret this." Mr. Foster paused at the door. "Mr. Morgan, I should remind you that these proceedings are being recorded, and threats against the new CEO of Pierce Technologies would not be viewed favorably in any potential legal action." Patrick subsided, his expression sullen but frightened. For perhaps the first time in his life, he was facing consequences for his behavior. In Mr. Foster's private office, away from my family's stunned and angry presence, the reality of what had just happened finally hit me fully. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. "Are you all right?" Jack asked, kneeling beside me. "I do not know," I answered honestly. "This is overwhelming." Mr. Foster sat across from us, his expression sympathetic but practical. "It is indeed a lot to process. Your grandfather anticipated that reaction as well. He left instructions that you should take as much time as you need to adjust to this new reality before making any major decisions." He slid a folder across the desk. "This contains all the immediate information you will need: access codes, contact details for key personnel, scheduled meetings for the next month, and a letter from your grandfather explaining his vision for the transition." I touched the folder reverently, knowing it contained Grandpa Harold's last guidance to me. "What happens now?" "That," Mr. Foster said with a small smile, "is entirely up to you, Miss Reynolds. You are in charge now." Jack squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I am with you. We will figure this out together." Looking into his eyes, I found the strength I needed. This inheritance was not just money or power. It was a responsibility to carry forward the values Grandpa Harold had lived by and had seen in me. I would not let him down. I want to meet with the executive team as soon as possible, I said, making my first decision as CEO. And I want to visit the company headquarters tomorrow. Mr. Foster nodded approvingly. I will arrange it immediately. As we left the building, I caught a glimpse of my family in the lobby huddled together in intense discussion, probably already plotting their next move. But for the first time in my life, I did not feel intimidated by them. Grandpa Harold had given me not just an inheritance, but something far more valuable: validation of the choices I had made and the person I had become. The cameras had captured it all, a permanent record of justice being served in the most unexpected way. As Jack and I stepped into the bright afternoon sunlight, I felt the weight of the past lifting and the possibilities of the future opening before me. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the integrity and determination that Grandpa Harold had recognized and valued in me. The tables had turned, and though I took no pleasure in my family's distress, I could not deny the profound sense of vindication that washed over me. The girl they had dismissed and discarded now held the keys to the kingdom. What I would do with that power remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: I would use it with the same principles that had guided me through the years of rejection and struggle. That, more than anything, would honor Grandpa Harold's true legacy. The first month as CEO of Pierce Technologies was a whirlwind of introductions, briefings, and steep learning curves. Despite my business background, nothing could have fully prepared me for taking the helm of a global technology corporation with over 10,000 employees and operations in 27 countries. True to Grandpa Harold's word, the executive team had indeed been prepared for my arrival. Most greeted me with cautious respect, some with undisguised curiosity, and a few with thinly veiled skepticism. I could hardly blame them. From their perspective, I had appeared out of nowhere to take control of the company they had helped build. "Your grandfather spoke highly of you," said Diane Fletcher, the chief financial officer, during our first one-on-one meeting. "But he also said you would want to prove yourself, not just rest on his endorsement." I appreciated her frankness. He was right. I do not expect anyone to simply accept my authority without question. I have a lot to learn, and I am counting on all of you to help me understand this business from the ground up. This approach, acknowledging my limitations while demonstrating my willingness to learn gradually, won over even the most doubtful executives. I spent those early weeks absorbing everything I could about the company's operations, strategies, culture, and challenges. I visited production facilities, sat in on team meetings at all levels, and had lunch with employees from different departments. At night, Jack and I would sit at our kitchen table, now covered with reports and organizational charts, discussing the day's discoveries and planning for the next. His outsider perspective often helped me see angles I had missed, and his unwavering support gave me strength when the magnitude of my new responsibilities felt overwhelming. "You are doing amazingly well," he assured me one evening when I expressed doubts about a major decision. "Harold knew exactly what he was doing when he chose you." Meanwhile, as expected, my family had not accepted their new reality gracefully. 2 weeks after the will reading, they filed a lawsuit contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and mental incapacity. As Mr. Foster had predicted, the case was weak, especially given the extensive documentation Grandpa Harold had assembled. The judge dismissed it at the preliminary hearing, citing insufficient evidence to proceed. My father then attempted a different approach, reaching out through intermediaries to suggest a compromise that would give them significant control over the company while leaving me as a figurehead. I declined politely, but firmly. Patrick took his defeat the hardest. Without the inheritance he had counted on, and with his reputation damaged by the revealed recordings, he spiraled into a destructive pattern of drinking and lashing out. He gave several ill-advised interviews to business publications, claiming I had manipulated our grandfather and was unqualified to run the company. These outbursts only further damaged his credibility and reinforced the wisdom of Grandpa Harold's decision. 3 months into my tenure, I made my first major decision as CEO, restructuring the research and development department to focus more heavily on sustainable technology solutions, an area Jack had been passionate about in his architectural work and that aligned with my own values. This move was met with mixed reactions from the board and investors, some viewing it as risky, others as visionary. I stood firm, presenting a detailed business case for how this pivot would position Pierce Technologies at the forefront of an emerging market while contributing to environmental solutions. My grandfather built this company by seeing opportunities others missed, I told the board. This is our chance to continue that legacy of innovation while addressing one of the most pressing challenges of our time. The restructuring proved successful beyond even my optimistic projections. Within 6 months, our sustainable technology division had developed 2 breakthrough products that attracted major partnerships and significant positive press. The stock price climbed steadily, silencing many of my initial critics. Around this time, I received an unexpected visit from Patrick. He looked thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that suggested he was barely holding himself together. "I need a job," he said without preamble, when my assistant showed him into my office. "No one will hire me after everything." I studied my brother, seeing beyond the arrogance to the lost young man beneath. "Why should I hire you, Patrick? You have spent months publicly attacking me and the company." He looked down, a flush spreading across his face. "I do not have anywhere else to go. Dad says I need to figure things out on my own now. Mom is, well, she is still trying to maintain appearances with her social circle." In that moment, I saw clearly how my parents' values had failed Patrick, just as they had failed me, though in very different ways. Where I had been neglected, he had been spoiled. Where I had been pushed away, he had been protected from consequences. Neither approach had prepared us well for life. "I will give you a position," I said finally, "but not in executive management, not yet. You will start in product development, working directly with our teams to learn the business from the foundation up, just as Grandpa tried to teach you." Patrick looked like he might object, then thought better of it. "Fine, whatever." "And Patrick," I added as he turned to leave, "this is not charity. You will be evaluated on your performance just like any other employee. This is your opportunity to show what you can actually contribute, not what you feel entitled to." Over the next year, something remarkable happened. Patrick, stripped of his expectations and forced to rely on his own efforts, began to change. Initially resentful and difficult, he gradually developed genuine interest in the work and even showed unexpected talent for product design. We were far from close, but a tentative respect began to grow between us. My parents took longer to come around. My father avoided direct contact, communicating only through lawyers when necessary. My mother, however, eventually reached out, inviting me to lunch at a neutral location. The conversation was strained and superficial, but it was a start. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said awkwardly as we prepared to leave. "The company is doing well under your leadership." It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of my capabilities she had ever offered. I accepted it for what it was, a small step toward healing. 2 years after inheriting Pierce Technologies, I stood on the stage at our annual innovation conference, unveiling a new initiative that brought together my past and present, a business incubator program designed to support small mission-driven companies like the one I had started before all of this. The program would provide funding, mentorship, and resources to entrepreneurs who demonstrated not just promising business models, but also commitment to ethical practices and positive social impact. Pierce Technologies began as one man's vision, I told the audience, which included industry leaders, employees, and press. But its future belongs to all of us who believe that business can and should be a force for good in the world. Jack watched from the front row, his eyes shining with pride. Beside him sat Laura, my former roommate, and now the director of our new foundation. Even Patrick was there, having earned a legitimate position as head of our emerging technologies division through genuine hard work and innovative thinking. After the presentation at the reception, an elderly woman approached me. "I was your grandfather's executive assistant for 20 years, she said, taking my hands in hers. "Harold always said that wealth reveals character, it does not create it. He would be so pleased to see how you have handled all of this." Her words touched me deeply, validating the path I had chosen and the values I had tried to maintain, despite the dramatic changes in my circumstances. Later that night, Jack and I walked through the garden of what had once been Grandpa Harold's farm and was now our home. The spring air was sweet with the scent of blooming flowers, and the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. "Do you ever regret it?" Jack asked. "Taking on all this responsibility, instead of continuing with our simpler life?" I considered the question carefully. Sometimes I missed the simplicity, I admitted, but I do not regret honoring Grandpa Harold's trust in me. And I like to think we have found a way to create meaning from all of this, not just manage wealth. Indeed, we had. Beyond the business success, we had established educational scholarships for underprivileged students, funded research into sustainable technologies, and created programs to support ethical business practices. The wealth Grandpa Harold had left me had become a tool for positive change rather than an end in itself. Jack and I had also started our family, welcoming our daughter Harriet the previous year, named in honor of my grandfather. Watching her grow, I was determined to raise her with the values he had tried to instill in our family: integrity, compassion, and the understanding that true worth comes from character, not possessions or status. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. There were moments of connection and long stretches of distance. Some wounds were too deep to fully heal, but we had reached a kind of peace. Patrick surprisingly had made the most complete transformation, finding purpose in work he had earned rather than inherited. As Jack and I stood looking up at the stars from the place where Grandpa Harold had first taught me about constellations, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had not been easy, and the pain of rejection had left its mark. But from that pain had come strength, clarity, and eventually a kind of justice I could never have imagined. "There are wounds that only time can heal," I said to Jack, voicing my thoughts. "But sometimes time needs a little help from truth and justice. Grandpa Harold gave me more than just a material inheritance. He gave me the strength to forgive and rebuild from the ruins." And that, I realized, was the most valuable legacy of all. Not the company or the wealth, but the understanding that even our deepest hurts can become the foundation for something beautiful and meaningful when we refuse to let bitterness define us. What about you? Have you ever experienced rejection from those who should have supported you the most? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and transformation. Remember, sometimes our greatest challenges lead to our most profound growth. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to write your own story of triumph.